In an ironic twist of fate, the first Ninja Turtles game I'm covering on Nickelodeon Video Game History is based on a show that came out over 20 years before Nickelodeon purchased the IP. Despite releasing 2 different TMNT shows since gaining the rights, Nickelodeon have really been utilising the nostalgia for the original 1987 series when it comes to video games. All-Star Brawl uses the designs from that series, and so does Extreme Tennis, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge goes the furthest of them all. It's essentially a sequel to the iconic arcade games of the late 80s and 90s. Developed by Konami, there were roughly 10 of these made across a bunch of different platforms, and they're actually being repackaged together in the upcoming Cowabunga collection. These kinds of arcade games have become more and more of a novelty over the years. Will Shredder's Revenge recapture those nostalgic feelings? I'm Brandon, and I'll be your captain for this journey through Nickelodeon video game history. Shredder's Revenge dropped on June 16 for PC, Switch, PS4 and Xbox One, and it was developed by Tribute Games, a fitting developer name and a fitting developer in general for this kind of game. Tribute Games are an indie studio based out of Quebec, founded in 2011 by former Ubisoft employees who, amongst other things, had worked on Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and TMNT on GBA. I'm really not familiar with the work they've produced under the Tribute Games banner, but the pedigree they bring from their Ubisoft days is a good start. Publishing the game is .mu, and I'm sticking with that pronunciation because I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce their name, but that's what I'm going with. And they also dabble in development, and they worked on Streets of Rage 4, which was one of the surprise hits of 2020. Again, it seems like the perfect people are at the helm of this love letter to 80s and 90s arcade beat-em-ups. The ball actually got rolling on Shredder's Revenge when Nickelodeon approached .mu following the release of Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap, mentioning the possibility of adapting one of the Nick franchises. This is a very similar story to how Nickelodeon approached Ludosity for All-Star Brawl after seeing Slap City. One of the things I like most about Nickelodeon on the game side of things at the moment is how proactive they are. They're seeking out specific developers and publishers who are skilled in the exact genres they're trying to develop. Compare this to Cartoon Network at the moment, who have made absolutely no moves in the video game space since Ben 10 Power Trip, unless you count infrequent updates to Unleash the Light. .mu knew that Tribute Games had been pitching TMNT games since their formation, so the two companies decided to meet up, and here we are today. On the surface, Shredder's Revenge seems like an idea that couldn't possibly fail based on the teams behind the scenes. Could it end up being one of the better games of 2022 so far? Shredder's Revenge is easily one of my favourite games I've played this year. At a quick glance, it looks pretty flashy for what it is. This might just be the best looking arcade side-scrolling beat-em-up I have ever seen. It starts with the opening cinematic and then just doesn't let up from there. This intro is super stylish and honestly sets the bar pretty high, but then you jump into the actual game and it's still gorgeous. Tribute Games have lovingly brought the Ninja Turtles universe to light with pixel art that is a cut above the competition. I think with pixel art styles like this, it's easy to just think, yeah, they all look the same, it's just a bunch of pixels, right? But go and look at the upcoming Cowabunga collection and you'll see just how well Tribute Games have done here. Even the way things like the HUD have been implemented just fit so perfectly. It gives you all the info you need in a succinct and aesthetically pleasing package. And then the turtles start beating the crap out of the Foot Clan, and you're treated to fluid animation that helps make Shredder's Revenge so satisfying to play. This loving touch extends from the visuals over into the audio department. They've brought back as many of the original voice actors from the original show as possible. While this is far from a story and dialogue heavy game, having them here just makes the game feel right. However, the real star of the show for most people is going to be the soundtrack. Tribute Games teamed up with T. Lopez, who probably is best known for his work on the Sonic Mania soundtrack. Analysing music is definitely not my strong suit. My critiques usually go no deeper than, this sounds good to me and this sounds bad to me. So to illustrate my point a little better, here's a medley of banger songs from the game. And it gets even better. Somehow this relatively small game from an indie developer got Ghostface Killer and Raekwon to do a song for the game, which plays during your final fight with Shredder.
Nice to meet you, now I'm here to beat you with full force. Let's have a features. I still the beast, I'm selling all your little Caesars. All y'all stuff your face with is pizza.
Even if the gameplay in Shredder's Revenge was pure A-grade manure, the visuals and sound would be worth the price of admission alone. And now's probably a good time to mention that the price of admission is pretty low. It's available on Xbox Game Pass, so if you've already subscribed to that, you've already got the game. But yeah, this is a video game, so I've got to talk about how it plays. This is not a case of all style and no substance. Shredder's Revenge has the gameplay to back up the presentation, and this is coming from somebody who isn't a fan of most arcade-style games, particularly beat-em-ups like this. I actually grew up on arcade games, but for whatever reason, as I've gotten older, I've just not been drawn to them. What you have here is basically your stock standard side-scrolling beat-em-up, except in my humble opinion, this style of game has never been done better. First of all, it really takes advantage of modern gaming standards to pull the genre into 2022. You can play Shredder's Revenge entirely on your own, but if you want to recreate the magical arcade experience of your childhood, there's 4-person local multiplayer. And then when you go online, that's expanded to 6 people. Naturally, the 4 turtles are playable characters, but joining them is Splinter, April, and Casey, although Casey is not unlocked until after you beat the game. So technically, if it's your first time playing through the game, there's room for every single unlocked character. As for game modes, you've got 2 options that are basically the same thing, but with a slight tweak that is a godsend for a player like me. First up is Story Mode, or Baby Ass Baby Mode if you're a veteran of this genre. This mode allows you to play through all of the game's stages without having to worry about a classic arcade-style game over. You're just given an infinite amount of chances to get through it all. But if you want that traditional IRL arcade experience where your entire run can come crashing down at any moment, that's what arcade is for. It's really the best of both worlds. You can hook in newbies or people like me with story mode, while diehard beat 'em up fans can go wild with a more traditional option. And then you've got 3 difficulty options too. I played through the entire game on the normal level difficulty, but honestly I think I could have survived the hardest level, at least for story mode. Normal did challenge me at times, particularly towards the very end of the game, but overall I found the difficulty to be quite forgiving. If you want the game's enemies to provide a bit more pushback, bump it up a notch. In the lead up to release, the devs at Tribute Games said they wanted to pay homage to the old TMNT games, but modernize them with quality of life enhancements. They absolutely nailed this. Shredder's Revenge is all about combat, and you're kind of just thrown into the deep end here. The game technically does have a tutorial, but it's entirely hands-off, which I always find to be the worst kind of tutorial. I need to be doing the actions myself to really get used to them. I did find that the early levels ease you in nicely though. You can easily go in blind and just sort of pick things up as you go. And while you're learning everything, you'll be struck by how damn smooth the combat is. Everything just feels right. I felt like I could flow from enemy to enemy with ease, and movement has a great sense of speed to it. A lot of other arcade beat 'em ups I've played, some of which I've reviewed on this channel, really feel like you're walking from enemy to enemy, and it's just stilted and dull. Shredder's Revenge makes you feel like you're in a fight you'd see on any of the TMNT shows. It's without a doubt the smoothest combat I've ever experienced in a beat 'em up, but being smooth isn't the be all and end all for a game like this where all you're doing is fighting. You're going to need spice and variety, or it's going to get stale quickly. Shredder's Revenge is great at offering the player plenty of environmental objects to interact with and use to your advantage. I never got tired of smashing something straight into a group of Foot Clan goons. You've also got plenty of unique moves to execute. Something I was glad to see is a pretty simplified control scheme. You don't need to pull off intricate strings of button presses to do cool moves. It feels like this game was designed with button mashers in mind. I mean, the standard combo is just you mashing the attack button 4 times. You've got several different aerial and running attacks, as well as a few grab attacks too. So much fun to see Leo smash an enemy like he's the Hulk, or toss them straight at the screen. Then there's the super attacks. In the corner of the screen, you'll find the ninja power meter, which is filled up by successfully attacking enemies without taking any damage yourself. When filled, you can activate a super attack that deals a far greater amount of damage. At first, both the meter and the type of super attack you can do are limited. You'll be able to fill the bar once and you have one type of attack. But this quickly changes thanks to the level up system here. You'll gain experience points as your body count piles up, and each time you gain a level, you're rewarded quite nicely. Your ninja power meter will be able to store 3 super attacks. You can perform super attacks from in the air and after backflipping, and of course you'll increase your health and the amount of lives you have. You start out with 3 lives for each level in story mode, and honestly I probably would have been okay if the game just stuck with these 3 lives. Not complaining though, because those extra lives definitely saved my ass a few times. The real cherry on top of both the leveling system and the combat as a whole is radical mode. When you have 3 super attacks stored up, you can cash them in with a click of the right bumper to go into radical mode, giving you a serious power increase for a limited time. It's like if the Turtles went Super Saiyan, and now I'm imagining a world where Tribute Games made a Dragon Ball beat 'em up. If anybody from the studio is watching this, please, I beg you, try and make this happen. As you run through levels, you'll find items to pick up. Most of the time they restore your health, but you've also got a couple of others that will give you a short burst of invincibility or unlimited ninja power. And to keep you further engaged with the gameplay and to give it some replayability, there are a bunch of challenges for you to do. They're pretty basic things like defeat X amount of enemies via a specific method or don't take any damage, but it's something to keep your mind active through levels. These kinds of small objectives are pretty crucial in genres where the gameplay loop is so simple. The same goes for the secrets and side quests in the game. You're probably thinking, how on earth does a game like this have side quests? And the answer comes back to them being super basic. As you smash open boxes and the like, you'll find seemingly random items at first. But if you keep smashing open boxes, you'll find side characters and you soon discover that you need to collect these items for them. It's pretty much just a fetch quest, but again, it's great to keep your mind ticking and the rewards for completing them go towards leveling your character up. Enemies are constantly changing as well. Yeah, 90% of your fighting is done against the Foot Clan, but they're always adding new types of ninjas to pound into dust. And the small tweaks to levels help too. Sure, you're basically always just scrolling left to right through a stage that is essentially a flat plane, but subtle tweaks make them feel different enough. Maybe it's an animal stampede through a zoo, or having to jump from building to building in a rooftop level. Tribute games are great at finding one little way to make the levels different. The real key to this game never getting stale though, everything is the perfect length. Stages never overstay their welcome because they always fall within the 5 to 10 minute range. And by the time you take down Shredder, you've been playing for around 2.5 hours. It's the ideal amount of time. Any longer and the game would have started to drag. Any shorter and you'd be running the risk of players feeling like the game was too light on content. While I've been pretty much just gushing about how great this game is, it's not without its flaws. Some of them are extremely minor, like the Chrome Dome boss fight being tedious, and me wishing I was able to switch from turtle to turtle throughout the story to keep things even more fresh. The only negative point I had about the game that almost strays into major territory was the on-rails levels. Combat feels so clunky in these sections, which is made even more jarring by the normal gameplay being close to flawless. The way the on-rails sections play actually remind me of how I feel playing most other beat-em-ups. So while it was jarring, it also made me appreciate just how well made 99% of Shredder's Revenge is.
Receiving incoming transmission.
Shredder's Revenge is one of my favourite games of 2022, and more importantly, it's by far the best Nickelodeon game I have ever played. I went into this game cautiously optimistic. The presentation stuff I've gushed over had me really hopeful in the lead up to release, but the fact that I traditionally haven't been a fan of this genre had me worried that Shredder's Revenge wouldn't click for me. All it took was 5 minutes of gameplay and I was hooked. Tribute Games basically addresses all the pain points I'd usually have with an arcade beat 'em up. It's accessible, the combat is insanely fluid, and it never overstays its welcome to the point where you feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over again, which is impressive because you're literally just doing the same thing over and over again here when you think about it. Combine all of that with the superb audio and visuals, and it's easy to see why I expect this game to be in my 2022 top 10 come the end of the year. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is incredible, and you should definitely pick it up even if you're not a big Turtles fan. Next time we'll be looking at Nicktoons Unite. I cannot wait to jump into this game. I'm obsessed with crossover video games, and while the typical party and sports games are nice, seeing a completely unique game that brings the Nicktoons together is just so much more hype. Unite came to the GBA, DS and home consoles, so I'll be looking at all three in a jam-packed review. To make sure you don't miss that video or any of my upcoming reviews, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the channel, jump over to Twitter and give me a follow.